In this video, I am going to discuss about externalities. Externalities refer to the impact of an economic transaction that affects someone other than the buyer or seller and is not reflected in the market price of the good or service. These impacts can be positive or negative and can result from the production or consumption of goods and services. There are two types of externalities, positive and negative. Let's talk about the positive externalities first. Positive externalities are benefits that are enjoyed by third parties as a result of an economic transaction and are not reflected in the market price of the good or service. For examples, education. When an individual receives education, they not only benefit themselves but also society as a whole, as they are better equipped to contribute to the economy and participate in civic life. Vaccination. When individuals get vaccinated, they not only protect themselves from diseases, but also protect others through herd immunity, creating a positive externality for the entire community. Renewable energy. Investing in renewable energy such as wind and solar power creates positive externalities by reducing greenhouse gas emissions and contributing to a cleaner environment. Research and development. Companies and institutions that invest in research and development create positive externalities by generating new knowledge and technologies that can be used by others and lead to further innovation and economic growth. Parks and public spaces. Building and maintaining parks and public spaces can create positive externalities by improving quality of life for residents and providing opportunities for recreation and relaxation. Government intervention. Government intervention for positive externalities involves using policy tools to encourage activities that generate positive externalities and ensure that the market allocates resources in an efficient manner. Subsidies. Governments can provide subsidies to firms or individuals that engage in activities that generate positive externalities. For example, the government might provide subsidies to firms that invest in research and development or households that install renewable energy systems. Tax credits. The government can offer tax credits to firms or individuals that engage in activities that generate positive externalities. For example, the government might offer a tax credit to firms that invest in renewable energy or to households that install energy efficient appliances. Information and education. Governments can also promote information and education programs to help individuals and firms understand the benefits of activities that generate positive externalities. Regulatory requirements. Governments can also use regulatory requirements to ensure that firms engage in activities that generate positive externalities. For example, the government might require firms to adopt environmentally friendly practices, invest in research and development, or provide public goods. Now let's talk about the negative externalities. Negative externalities are costs that are imposed on third parties as a result of an economic transaction and are not reflected in the market price of the good or service. For examples, pollution. Many industrial activities such as manufacturing, transportation and agriculture generate pollutants that can harm the environment and human health. The costs of these pollutants are not reflected in the market price of the goods and services, creating a negative externality. Traffic congestion. When drivers use the roads, they not only incur costs themselves but also impose costs on other drivers through increased traffic and decreased road capacity. These costs are not reflected in the market price of driving, creating a negative externality. Overfishing. When fishermen catch more fish than is sustainable, they impose costs on future generations by reducing the size of fish populations and the future potential of the fishery. These costs are not reflected in the market price of fish, creating a negative externality. Pesticides and herbicides. The use of pesticides and herbicides in agriculture can harm the environment and wildlife, and also pose risks to human health. The cost of these impacts are not reflected in the market price of the agricultural products, creating a negative externality. Noise pollution. Noise pollution from sources such as construction sites, transportation and entertainment can impose costs on nearby residents and negatively impact their quality of life. The costs of this pollution are not reflected in the market price of the activities that generate the noise, creating a negative externality. Now let's talk about the market failures. Market failure occurs when the market fails to allocate resources in an efficient manner. Externalities can lead to market failure because they result in market prices that do not accurately reflect the true costs or benefits of a transaction. To prevent this inefficiency in the market, governments will intervene. Government intervention in externalities involves using policy tools to correct market failures caused by externalities and ensure that the market allocates resources in an efficient manner. For examples, taxes. Governments can impose taxes on activities that generate negative externalities, such as pollution. To internalize the costs into market prices, this gives firms an incentive to reduce their negative impact, as they will face higher costs if they do not. Regulation. Governments can impose regulations to limit the negative impact of externalities. For example, a government might limit the amount of pollution that a factory can emit, or require companies to implement measures to reduce their negative impact. Property rights. Governments can establish property rights and liability laws to help internalize externalities. For example, if a factory is emitting pollution that affects a neighbor, the neighbor can sue the factory for damages, giving the factory an incentive to reduce its pollution. Information and education. Governments can also promote information and education programs to help individuals and firms understand the impacts of their actions and make more informed decisions. Simply, externalities are costs or benefits to a third party when an economic transaction takes place. But that cost or benefit does not reflect in the price of the good or service. This is where the governments intervene. If the externalities are positive, government will encourage them. If the externalities are negative, government will impose policies to reduce the negative externalities to the third person. Now let's recap today's video. We discussed about externalities. These are the impacts to a third party because of an economic transaction, but that cost or the benefit does not reflect in the price of the good or service. There are two types of externalities: positive, negative. Positive externalities are the benefit to the third party. For examples, education, vaccination, renewable energy. Governments will encourage these types of externalities by subsidies, tax credit, information and education sessions. Negative externalities are the cost to the third party. For examples, pollution, overfishing, traffic congestion. Governments will intervene to reduce or prevent these types of externalities. For examples, imposing taxes, regulations, property rights. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.